Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. We are Group 1 and today we will be presenting about inflation in Cuba. Before we dive into the core discussion, in this presentation we will explore the causes of inflation in Cuba, its impact on the population, policies taken by the government, and suggestions to improve the situation. So, let's begin by understanding the background of Cuba and how its economic model has evolved over time.
Cuba is the largest island in the Caribbean, which is located around the United States, Mexico, Jamaica, and Haiti. Cuba has a population of around 11 million people, with about 70% living in the urban areas, mainly in Havana, the capital. Based on the trend, Cuba has decreasing birth rate starting from 2019 until 2023, which is around 182,950 people, with 11,202,346 people in the 2019 and 11,090,931 in 2023.
Cuba has changed the market system from capitalist to a socialist economy dominated by state control. Since the Cuban Revolution in 1959, the government has nationalized most industries and services to eliminate poverty and inequality, break the dependence on the United States and to serve all citizens, not just the rich. This has caused United States to pressure the country through economic sanction. In response, Cuba grew closer with the Soviet Union to seek support in the early 1990s. Cuba lost Soviet Union support after the USSR collapse, which caused shortages of fuel, food, medicine, and income. Cuban convertible peso (CUC) was introduced alongside the existing Cuban peso (CUP) in 1994 to address the economic crisis. The CUC was pitched to the US dollar and primarily used in tourism, also for purchasing imported goods, while the CUP remained the currency for domestic transactions and states' salaries. Inflation is the rate of increase in price over time. It is calculated based on the average price change of selected goods and services. Inflation results from the complex interplay between supply and demand. There are two types of inflation: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation is a type of price increase that happens when there is not enough supply to meet the demand, often resulting in too many dollars chasing too few goods. While cost push inflation is a phenomenon that occurs when the cost of producing goods and services increase, leading to a decrease in the aggregate supply and ultimately resulting in a rise in price.
For issue number 1, monetary of currency reform in January 2021. Cuba unified its dual currency system by eliminating the Cuban convertible peso (CUC) and setting the Cuban peso (CUP) to an official rate of 24 CUP per USD. This reform is known as Terra Ordinamiento, the ordering task, which is aimed to streamline the economy and reduce reliance on state-controlled enterprises. The inflation rises sharply because of the government actions by increasing the wages, but at the same time, removing the subsidies, which has resulted in an increase in Cuban living costs. Conversions to a single CUP currency has made many important goods become far more expensive. For example, before reformations of $100 important goods only cost 100 CUC, but after reformations, the CUP was set at 24 CUP per USD. Now, to import the same $100 item, Cuba needs 100 USD times with 24 CUP per USD, which costs 2,400 CUP. So the same product that cost 100 CUC in the old system now costs 2,400 CUP in the new system.
The sanctions limit Cuba's ability to trade directly with the US and also affect foreign companies or banks that have ties with the US. Because of this, Cuba has to import goods like food, medicine, and fuel through longer and more expensive routes. The higher import costs make the prices of these items go up in local markets. At the same time, according to BBC News 2023, Cuba also faces difficulties in getting foreign currency, like the US dollar. This is because sanctions reduced tourism stopped many Cuban Americans from sending money back home and blocked Cuba from accessing the international banking system. Since Cuba doesn't have enough foreign currency, it becomes harder to buy goods from other countries. This causes shortages of necessities in the stores. When there are not enough goods, people have to queue for hours to turn to the black market, where prices are much higher. Even government shops sometimes raise prices to manage demand. All these factors have pushed the inflation higher and make daily life more difficult for the Cuban people.
Inflation impacts the daily life of Cubans, as more than 90% of their income is allocated to the basic products and services, which fail to meet their fundamental needs. Here are several impacts of inflation that happen in Cuba. The first one is reducing purchase power. According to Travel with Alejandro 2022, Cuba's inflation has also hurt the populace, mostly in the way of reducing purchasing power. With the price of vital commodities and the service continuing to rise, people's income has become devalued. That is, even if wages are not cut or grow slightly, Cubans can buy less with their hard-earned cash than before. The fundamental goods such as food, medicine, and domestic items has become more and cost prohibits and cuts of rich. The condition affect low incomes and middle class households to a larger degree since they spend a greater portion of their income daily necessities. As a result, the majority of Cubans are experiencing a reduced standard of living, increasing poverty, and increased inequality of access of fundamental goods.
For the second impact, shortage of goods inflations can lead to serious shortage when businesses are unwilling to sell goods at prices that do not cover their increasing production costs. This problem is clearly seen in Cuba, where there have been continuous shortage of basic necessities like food, medicines, and hygiene products. According to CGTN America, in 2024, economic crisis in Cuba sparked food shortage. Based on YouTube video, CGTN reported by Luis Quirino, the shortage can be attributed to a combination of factors, including the struggling economic, disease, agriculture output, and difficulties in importing goods. As a result of this issue, prices rise while supply becomes limited, causing long queue, rationings of goods, and limited access to daily essentials.
For Policy 1, Monetary Reform and Peso Devaluation, the Tierra Ordenamiento in January 2021 was created to devalue peso, unified currencies, and cause inflation. By August 2022, a second rate of 120 CUP per USD was implemented by the Cuban Central Bank to reduce black market pressures and to limit transactions. This reform attempted to close the gap between the official exchange rate set at 24 CUP per USD and the black market rate, which was significantly higher. In fact, the gap widened over time and led to a lack of confidence in the Cuban peso and banking system.
Policy 2 is addressing fiscal deficit. According to Orlando Matters 2024, the Cuban government announced the new economic measure to fight inflation and improve the economy. Price for the basic service like electricity, water, fuel, and public transport will go up. For example, home that use a lot of electricity will pay 25 more, and some people will pay 3 times more for water. The government will also cut subsidy and give support only for those who are really need it. At the same time, there will be a new rule and higher tax for foreign business and self-employed workers. These charges are meant to reduce government spending and control inflation.
For the first suggestion, wage control. In Cuba, implementing an income policy to align wage growth with labor productivity is crucial. By negotiating with labor unions to prevent excessive wage hikes, the government can help keep production costs stable. This reduces the pressure on producers to raise prices, helping to manage inflation. For example, Cuba can reduce its minimum wages from 2,100 CUP to 1,900 CUP to control inflation.
Next, second suggestion is by improving productivity. In Cuba, enhancing productivity is a key to control inflation. By offering tax incentive to producers for engaging research and development, the government can encourage innovation and efficiency. This leads to lower production costs, increased output, and reduced reliance on imports to ease inflationary pressure.
For the third suggestion, expand diplomacy. Despite US sanctions, Cuba can ease inflation through diplomacy by strengthening ties with countries like China, Russia, and BRICS members. Trade deals and barter arrangements can secure essential imports and reduce reliance on the US. Attracting investment from allies can boost local supply and foreign exchange to help stabilize prices.
In conclusion, inflation in Cuba is caused by both internal and external factors. Internally, the government tried to reform the economy by unifying its currency and removing subsidies. However, this led to a sharp increase in the price and a drop in the people's purchasing power. Externally, US sanctions made it difficult for Cuba to trade and access foreign currency, which caused shortage of essential goods like food and medicine. The Cuban government has introduced several economic reforms, but its effects are still slow. To manage inflation more effectively, Cuba needs to improve productivity, control wages growth, and reduce its reliance on the US by strengthening ties with non-Western countries. It is important to rebuild the economy to improve the quality of life for Cuban people.